My colleague Kendra Ford has served the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Exeter, New Hampshire since 2001. Before going to seminary, Ford studied poetry, and that's something that she continues to put to use as a minister. In July then, the Church of the Larger Fellowship, the UU congregation which has no church buildings but more than 3,600 members, published one of Ford's poems entitled Be Like Water. Run deep, run clear, fill any space to its own dimensions, respond to the moon, to gravity, change colours with the light, hold your temperature longer than the surrounding air, take the coast by storm, go underground, bend light. Be the one thing people need even when they're fasting. Eat boulders quietly. Be a universal solvent. Thankfully, all the water in Hurricane Joaquin did not take the coast by storm this weekend. But it does seem like the rain has been filling every space, particularly, it seems, my shoes. The central image of Ford's poem, of course, is that water can be many different things and can change between them, which is one of the definitions of the word fluid. Water can even be alive. The human body, for instance, is almost 2/3 water, with every biochemical reaction that produces movement and sensation and emotion and thought taking place in water within our bodies. Even without knowing the science of it, though, it's not hard to see how water has provided spiritual symbolism for a very long time in human history. Long before humanity understood fire, there was water. It falls from the sky, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, sometimes so fine that it just hangs in the air, sometimes as cold white bits that turn into water if they get warm. It makes the ground wet, and enough of it can gather in pools that once still reflect back faces to startled eyes. But then, given clear skies and warming sunlight, water on the ground just disappears. Seemingly as magical, water can in some places simply bubble up out of the ground. And water that flows can manifest in just as many forms too, from gentle streams where fish can be caught, to mighty rivers that slice deep into the landscape. Given the fluid mystery that is water, it's not surprising that many ancient cultures had the world being born, just like ourselves, from a watery womb. In the beginning, the book of Genesis relates, the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. Of course, and not to poke holes in Kendra Ford's poem, there is one more thing that people need even when they're fasting, and that's air. We can go without food for quite some time. We might even make it without water for a while, but we can't not breathe for more than a few minutes. And so to continue that verse from Genesis, a wind moved across the face of the waters. In the Hebrew, the word translated wind literally means breath. And in the following verses, that breath is put to use in speaking creation into being. And so the Hebrew word for breath is also translated as spirit. But while air and the necessity of breathing air give us the root of the very concept of spirituality, air itself doesn't really lend itself so much to religious symbolism. For one thing, we don't spend much time thinking about it because it's all around us, all the time. There's a metaphor in that, for sure, but maybe not useful symbolism. For another, when we do notice air, that's because it's moving. But the difference between types of air movements, from a gentle breeze to a Category 4 hurricane, is of degree, not of kind. Water, by contrast, offers many more options. Now, unlike the flower communion, which we celebrate in the spring, the water communion doesn't seem to have a clear origin story. According to the Unitarian Universalist Association, the first water communion was celebrated at a UU service in the 1980s. Drawing upon the possibilities offered by the symbolism of water, the idea behind the ritual is straightforward. As people take turns pouring a little water into a larger common bowl, it represents how each of us gives something of ourselves to this community of which we are all a part. Now, in some congregations, the invitation is to bring water from some place a person had visited during their summer travels, and then share something about the personal meaning of that place. But aside from opening the door to lengthy accounts of what I did on my summer vacation, it also tended to be classist and competitive and exclusive, an opportunity for some people who have the means to boast about their sightseeing while putting down the majority that can't afford such travels. So, few congregations do the water communion that way anymore. Here, for instance, the invitation is to bring water from home, though we also have water from the fellowship's own kitchen as an option. And then, when it comes time to pour that water into the common bowl, the invitation is to say something, a short sentence, even just a word, about what it is that you bring to this congregation, what it is from your own life that you're pouring into the life of this fellowship. Each of us, in being like water, can take many shapes and do many things. Some of the possibilities are beneficial, like the rain that nourishes a field so that crops may grow. Some are far from desirable, like high tides that cause flooding and damage. And so through it all there's an unrest, a yearning for the best of the possibilities. After all, the water communion represents not only our restless wishes and daring hopes for this congregation, but also our dreams and needs for ourselves. For whatever we give of ourselves individually, we are together growing the beloved community for one another and for our world. So may it be.